Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to study the count meta argument of Terraform. So let's get started. Uh, to create a S3 bucket we will need first of all, in this directory I have nothing, and so I will need a main.tf and I will need a provider.tf. Okay, so I have the provider.tf and I can provider AWS, save it and close this window. I go to main.tf. We will create a bucket here. Resource AWS S3 bucket, and name I'll give as B. You can give it anything. Then okay, so I'll create a very basic bucket. Okay, so there will be the bucket name, and the bucket name can be anything, but in this case let us go and create a S3 bucket with the name K3 GPNQ, some random number. Okay, so I just generated a random number. Go back to the editor and the bucket will be this. Okay, and tags, so the tags are going to be some key and value, say ID. So how do I identify this bucket? I will identify this bucket with the environment. So say my environment is dev, just for example. Let it be dev with followed by a hyphen and then followed by the name of the bucket itself. So in this case it will be this, right? I just copy it from here and paste here, and that's it. And then that is your bucket. And I just save this here and come here and do a terraform init to initialize it. Okay, it got initialized, and I will just drag it a bit up, and then I do a terraform plan and followed by, it's taking some time, so you can see it's one to add. If you see that this particular bucket is going to get created, AWS S3 bucket dot b, this is the name I have given over here, and this bucket name of the bucket is displayed here, and this is going to get created. So I'll just to create it quickly, terraform apply auto approve, so that it doesn't prompt you to type in that yes. And yes, so I apply it. There is some noise coming from my neighbors, so just ignore it and let us focus on this exercise. Okay, so here you go. So it's creating pretty fast, and one bucket has been already created. Ls grep k3p, something like this, and I should be able to see this bucket. Yes, I can see that bucket is already there. Okay, fine. So we have created our bucket, and that is good. So moving on, suppose you have to now create 3 buckets. So this bucket got created, so that's why I've given it in lighter red color. So suppose you have to create 3 buckets. What are you going to do? The way you look at it is like, then you have to create those this block of code 3 times, right? So normally you would do this followed by this followed by this, and say these 3 bucket names are like -1 or 2 and 3, right? So this is what you are thinking that you will do. But if I say that this is actually not a smart way of doing things, because it's like you are repeating your code, a better way of doing it is using the count argument in Terraform. So we declare it something like, say for example 3, and we are going to create 3 buckets in this case, right? So that's why I have given it 3, and then the bucket name itself is going to be different, right? So if I do it like this, so if I comment it out, so I do not have a fixed bucket name here, but I need a kind of a mechanism by which I can get all the 3 names here, right? So some kind of a mechanism by which I can get all these 3 names here, then I should be able to uh, create these 3 buckets, right? So this will be 3, this will be 1, this is 2. Okay, so let's see how we can do it. For doing that, there is something that you need to do, is we need to create a variable of type list and touch variables.tf. So let's go to the variable part. So this is my variable, so this is my main function, this is the variable. So variables, I will give variable, it's always starts with variable keyword, and then I have to give the name of the variable. So here in this case it is bucket names, okay, and then this is type is equal to, we have to say which type of variable it is. So this is type is a list of what, list of string, right? Okay, and then okay, the value, so what will be the value? So the value you can provide it in different ways. We will also check that in a future video maybe, but for now, to populate the value of the variable here, we can do like default, and then we just get rid of this double quote here, and because we already copied it from there, so we give something like this. So I'll get rid of this bracket here, it's getting a bit messier. Yeah, this is how it looks. So default, the name of the variables 1 2 3, and I am going to call this variable 1 2 3 from here. So I define the count first with the number of items here, and then I need to call this from this variable. So how do I do this? I cannot hard code it because I need it to be kind of a dynamic like thing. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do var dot the name of the variable, which in this case is bucket names. You can check here, all right? It's basically a bucket names. So var dot bucket names, and then this count dot index, right? So this count dot index is basically going over this list. So count dot index, I have given 3 because there are 3 items. So the way it will go is, now the square bracket, first of all it will be 0, then it will be 1, then it will be 2. So it will be 0 and this value, 2 and this value, and 3 then third value, which is the third name. This is the random string -3, that is the third value. Okay, so it will go over this. So instead of this hard coded bucket, now I am giving this variable over here. So it will go over the list of 3 names, and it will create the 3 buckets for me. And also this tag is my dev environment, and then this name also I need to change, right? Because this is also hard coded, but I also want, like, for bucket 1 this key will be this, and for bucket 2 the key will be -2, something like that. So I cannot hard code here, therefore I'll need this dynamic way of populating, which is nothing but we already saw here, var.bucket names count.index, right? So here is here I'll have to give this, but I'll put it inside a dollar and third bracket, and because it is under double quotes, so this is how it looks. That's good, this looks so nice, and I'll get rid of this comment. That was only for your understanding. So this particular block is now going to create 3 buckets for me, right? So you can see how count actually makes the code drier. The concept of dry code is like it's do not repeat yourself. So you do not repeat three times that block, but with one block you are able to create three buckets, right? So this looks pretty neat. Let's see whether it works. So I'll just clear the screen, go ahead for plan, and you can see now that there should be like three buckets that will be created. You can see it here, right? Because one was already created earlier, so it will be like two to add. um, so let's create them. Terraform apply auto approve, so they get created now. Yeah, so it's creating the buckets now. And if I do AWS S3LS grep K3P, now we should be able to see three buckets, right? So this is good. We now have created, so earlier we created one bucket in the conventional way, then we created three buckets with the count argument of Terraform. So as I already explained to you, if I would not have used the count argument of Terraform, then I would have to use this kind of blocks three times. But this is a pretty dumb way of writing code. This is not good. So that's why we now don't use that, but we use a count function, and with the count function we are able to create three buckets with this much only. Okay, yeah, so I forgot to tell you that this is also hard coded, right? So suppose tomorrow I think that I will have one more bucket to the list, so I add one more bucket here. This count will remain to 3, so that will be a problem, so I have to change here also. So to make it even more dynamic, what I can do is I can use a length function here, and that length is names, right? So this is good. So in this way, these three I have replaced with this length function. So it calculates the length from this particular variable and populates here. In this case it will be 3, right? Now say I'm not actually satisfied with these three buckets, right? Because I want to create more items that are dependent on these buckets. In this case, for this example, say I want to create three policies and attach it to these buckets with these two items. So this policy is for this bucket, and the second policy is for the second bucket, and the third policy is for the third bucket. So the way they are related is through the bucket ID. In this, you capture the ID from here and you feed on to this, you capture the ID from here and you feed on to this, capture the ID from here and feed on to this, and then you created all the 6 resources with minimum possible code. So we'll see how we can do that, but let's see how can we see the code for the bucket policy. So Terraform is 3 bucket policy. So if you can see that the Terraform S3, an example of a bucket policy is this, for example. So I'll copy this, but I just copy it over here and go back to my editor, and then I create this particular block over here. And as you can see that this particular bucket policy, it needs the bucket ID, and the bucket ID will come from here, right? But as you know that this particular, there is no single bucket ID, so there are 3 buckets, so there will be 3 IDs from here. So this will have one ID, this will have one ID here, and also it will have a bucket ARN also. We'll need that in the policy. I'll just show you. Okay, so there are 3 IDs, 3 ARNs for 3 different buckets. I need to capture those IDs and ARNs from the above block. So how do I do that? This is pretty simple actually. If we go back to our count function, so I'll comment it for now, and I will use a different way of getting the bucket ID from there. So the bucket is, and then a count dot index, right? And then I'll give ID. But hang on, this count is known to this, but this count is not known to this. So I need to define the count here also, here. So in that way, the count, I've set the count, and each of the bucket ID from there is passed on to this. So from here, that's why, how can I fetch it from here? First is AWS S3 bucket. So AWS S3 bucket here dot b, because this b here, it can be xyz also, something else also, but because it is b, so that is b. And then dot id I cannot give because it is not one id, there are three ids, so that's why I need count.index. So count.index will be first 0, then 1, then 2. 0 is the first element of the list, 1 is the second element of the list, and 3 is the third, sorry, 2 is the third element of the rest of the list. And let's see what happens. Okay, there is some error. Okay, there is, okay, I forgot to set these things. So there will be like AWS S3 bucket dot b ARN. So if you see these IDs and ARNs, you can check here. So if I go to bucket, and then I'll go to the right, whatever I want, I'll get it here. So AWS S3 bucket, I can see the syntax here. I can also see below, if you reference, ID is one attribute reference, ARN is attribute reference. There are other attribute references also, but now we will need ID and ARN. Okay, for, so I just copy it instead of typing it one more time, and I'll just put it here. Okay, instead of ID I'll write ARN because it needs the ARN. Okay, and here also I'll type the ARN. That's all. Now this should be fine. I save it, then run terraform plan one more time. Yes, and it is finding out. So it says the 3 to add. So there are 3 already resources already present, 3 terraform buckets, sorry, 3 AWS buckets. Now there will be 3 AWS there will be 3 S3 bucket policies attached to those 3 S3 buckets, right? So let me do a terraform apply auto approve. That should be it. And then you can see actually, right? So this amount of code only, it's just one code for the bucket, one code for the policy, and that's it. And that creates 6 resources actually. So as you can see now, there is 3 has been added. So the 3 policies have been created, and 3 buckets also, S3 buckets have also been created. Know these smart ways of managing your application landscape with Terraform code in a way that you write minimum code and you generate maximum resources, then your code will be considered a very good, it will be an example of dry code. So I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, definitely give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much.